Welcome to This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, brought to you by Riverside Auto Group and produced by WLAQ Sports. Each week, we bring you insight, analysis, interviews, and our predictions for the week's matchups around the Northwest Georgia area. Here are your hosts.
All right, and welcome back in to another episode, and I should also say the last episode of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football for the 2024 season. We are going to conclude our football coverage here with this program today. How are you, man?
I'm great, man. Great. Excited to wrap up what has been another great season in high school football here in Northwest Georgia.
It really has. So in addition to picking a few playoff games, 6 to be exact, we'll kind of recap the season, talk about some things that we saw throughout the year and things to look forward to coming up next year, that sort of thing. But we do want to take an opportunity to reintroduce our panel. I'm Matt Davis alongside Ian Griffin of V3. He's across the table from me today. But typically we have Grayson Atkins, who's been at WLAQ and also V3 intern for the year and will be with us through the rest of the school year. But unfortunately, he couldn't be with us today. But we wanted to make sure that we acknowledged his presence, even though he couldn't be in the room. And we've got his picks, so we'll reload those to you as we go along throughout our show today. But anyway, I've really enjoyed having Grayson on the panel this year. He's contributed some good insight here to the program. It's been fun. And he's provided a challenge, too. He's been competitive in his picks this year.
He has pushed you to the very end. We'll see if there are enough differences to keep him alive as we go throughout our picks today. But, yeah, the kid, y'all both whooped me. And that leads me to this wonderful award.
Hold that up to the camera if you like. That way people can see what you win.
I'm the proud recipient of the Rick Award. So this will go on my mantle at Christmas, and I'll display it proudly until I have a chance to redeem myself in 2025.
Well, I don't know how many years you've beat me in a row. It was due that somebody else won besides you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It was a good streak. And I will humbly accept my position in last place here this year.
Well, enjoy that.
Thank you.
I'll enjoy not having it this year.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, this is This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. Games we're going to talk about today. We got a big one that we're going to come out of the gate with. In Georgia Association of Private and Parochial Schools, Unity Christian Lions for the third year in a row are championship game bound. They're going to Pinecrest Academy, and they're facing a really, really good team. They've played once before in the season, and it didn't go their way. So they're hoping to turn the tides on that one. And out of 7 AD2, the Tri-Bulldogs still alive, won 45-40 last week at Schley County, and they're heading to Telfair County. Talk about 2 long road trips in consecutive weeks. That's
Schley and Telfair, road warriors in the truest form.
Indeed. And then out of 7AA, the Rockmart Yellow Jackets, they're going to be playing at home against Westside Seminoles. Out of 7 AAA, it's the Calhoun Yellow Jackets hosting the Douglas Astros. And 7-4A, Cartersville Canes hosting Stars Mill Panthers. And then the last game we'll talk about today is going to be a team out of 5A. That's your Rome Wolves. And a familiar foe from last year, they're hosting Thomas County Central Yellow Jackets with a little revenge on their minds and hearts.
Yeah, this is the team that knocked them out in the quarterfinals last year and then went on to win a state championship, which is always, they went down to the eventual state champion, but they would, I think if they hold on to win that game, then they would have been state champions. So that's a tough pill to swallow, but a chance for all the underclassmen who are still on this team and were part of that game last year to come back and go a little payback.
And exactly, and that's the whole thing about sports, man. It's those storylines, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a better storyline than that particular matchup in this round of the playoffs and that chance for redemption that Ryan has in front of them this weekend. And I hope they get it.
Pretty exciting. Really and that game is at Barron Stadium. It's going to be chilly, but that's how it's supposed to be. So if you're a Rome fan or not, if you want to come watch a heck of a game, because these are 2 really great defenses, and we'll dive more into the X's and O's of this thing later. But you want to watch a really good high school football game, you got the opportunity to do it in downtown Rome this Friday.
Indeed, and kind of recapping the season for some teams that we're not going to be talking about today because they're staying in the playoffs. Ended this past week, the Darlington Tigers, and Coach Grove's second year as the head coach of the Tigers, made it the playoffs 2 years in a row. And I believe I saw in the newspaper that's the first time in Darlington history that a head coach there has made it to the playoffs in consecutive years to start their tenure there.
Wow.
So that's definitely a tip of the cap to him. Yeah. And they've been called the Dirty 30 throughout the season. It was not an easy task to get to that point. They definitely had some ebb and flow to the season, if you want to call it that, some injuries to overcome, a lot to overcome with a small roster. And they achieved a lot this year. So I hated that the season ended the way it did with the quarterback, Sammy Konchesky, going down second to last game of the season, and then just kind of, couldn't pull it together after that for a lot of reasons. They've been banged up quite a bit towards the end of the year. But that doesn't take away from what a special season it was and how fun it was at good portions of the season.
Yeah, bittersweet ending, but some high-quality football. And a team that just wouldn't give in to adversity. Eventually, they ran out of bullets to fire late in the season, but they didn't quit giving that maximum effort that their coach expects from them. Not the way you want it to end, but a really great season with some super highs, including, I would say, the win over Whitfield Academy stands out. The Pepperell game is an instant classic. I think you and I both agree there. A shutout.
Anybody that saw it, was there, watched the video, heard the radio call, anybody that knows what happened in that game, we don't have time to recap it totally. I definitely think would agree, instant classic, like you said.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and then you had the shutout win against Model also. So some real high moments hung in there with a really good North Cobb Christian team. Really I think, outplayed them, honestly. Just a couple of turnovers there when they were knocking on the door to tie that game up. And I think that one could have gone the other way. But great effort from Coach Groves, jumping over. I think we need to commend Jeff Cannon and the job that he did at Coosa. They scored a big upset victory over Chattooga late in the season and made the playoffs for the first time in a hot minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Did a fantastic job with that group. And then, of course, speaking of Chattooga, you mentioned getting upset by Coosa, but they had a heck of a year.
Yes,
and a lot of that had to do with the running prowess of Zayden Cook, who put the state on notice. But at the same time, just a good squad with that group and just really had a good year. Obviously had an early exit there last week, but at the same time had a great year and definitely was one of the standouts. Gordon Central making it back to the playoffs.
Yeah, great story there.
Yeah, and starting to get things going in the right direction with that program. Lenny Gregory and what he's been able to do there in the last few years, obviously making some progress was another thing that was good to see.
Yeah, real nice to see that squad make a playoff run and moving in the right direction. And, if there's one consistent trend that we have up here, not just in Floyd County, but in Northwest Georgia with all the teams we covered, man, it seems like every one of them has just got a high caliber, quality person running that program. Our head coaches and our assistant coaches in this region are second to none. They're just, I think we should commend them all for the job that they do.
Of course, one of the teams that got eliminated from the playoffs, kind of suffered because of a tough draw. You talked about that a lot on the show last week, but the Cedartown Bulldogs being eliminated by Cambridge, that was a tough situation. And again, one of those draws you hate to see in the first round like that.
Yeah. You feel like a team that, Cedartown had one loss, and it was a close one to Cartersville. And then you draw a Cambridge team who's 8-2, but when you look at the region that they were coming from, that was a buzzsaw. So, it stood out to me last week. That was the toughest draw, in my opinion, last week. And Cambridge got them. It was close. But Jamie Abrams, that was a heck of a football team, and they deserve some credit. A first-round exit is not indicative of the talent and skill that they had on the field this year.
Anybody that you feel like we're leaving out? We're going to take our first break.
Biff Parson continuing a heck of a tradition. How many straight region championships? Eight straight region championships. They lost the first couple of games of the season to some really good competition, and then haven't lost since, which is a trend that they continue. So that's super impressive. I think we should give Brendan Haywood a shout out too, because Pepperell had a lot of adversity, just kept finding ways to lose games, and it took them a while to finally get that first win, but that team never quit on him, and that to me says a lot about the effort of him and his coaching staff. So expect Pepperell to grow and get better going forward next year. Those are just a couple of things I'd like to point out, but a fantastic season overall.
No doubt. Well, we're going to take our first break of the show. Then we'll come back and we'll let you know how the picks went last week as we get ready to dial up the remaining picks that we have for the show this year. Will we find out who the winner is of the contest this year?
I guess we'll find
today.
out.
We may. We'll see. But we'll be back. This is This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, and we shall return to pick some games after these messages.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
All right. We welcome you back into this episode of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, our 14th show of the season, and it's the second round of the playoffs for most teams. And, of course, for the Unity Christian School Lions, which we're going to talk about in a couple of moments. Well, they're playing for a championship. Won it last year. Can they go back-to-back? That's a question that we're going to try to answer in just a couple of moments. But real quick, Ian, let's recap last week's picks. We all missed the Cambridge over Cedartown game. And that's the only one that you and I missed. So we both were 8-1. Last week, we were tied. Grayson and I were tied, but he had a couple of others that were differences there that he ended up missing. So he went 6-3 as he also missed Unity over Lafayette Christian and then Trine over Schley. So going into this week, I have a 2-game lead over Grayson. So he's got to have 2 differences over the course of our picks today for us to have a tie. So, and then obviously 3 to potentially be able to take win. And I'd calculate that right? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't know how much of a riverboat gambler Grayson's going to choose to be this week, but these are some tough games to pick. I could see most of them going either way.
And I have to admit, at least on one of these games, y'all might think I am gambling a little bit because I've got one in there that I think is going to be a little bit of a surprise pick, maybe for some people. But we'll see. And, yeah, you want to just go ahead and jump in?
Let's do this. All
right. Let's start in Georgia Association of Private and Parochial Schools and talk about the Unity Christian Lions, who are heading to Pinecrest Academy to take on the Paladins. Did I say that right?
You did.
I've been known to pronounce that name incorrectly sometimes. I'm not sure why.
Nailed it.
But I've done that in the past. Do you want to take this one, or you want me to jump into it?
Sure, I'll go. The Lions are on a very similar trajectory to what they have in the past few seasons. They're peaking at the right time. They get hot around playoff time. And again, they had that really odd stretch where they didn't get a game in for 4 weeks. I think that threw them off. They lost to this Paladin team pretty soundly early in the season. Here's something, but they're coming off a revenge game just last week. They lost to Lafayette Christian early in the season, but they beat them last week. But let's look at this Paladin team closely. Listen to this, man. They've outscored their opponents 453-70. The closest margin of victory all season was 27 points. Look, I know Coach Hump's going to have these guys ready. The Lions will bring their best effort, but this Paladin team just seems to be on a different level. I've got to pick them as much as I'll be rooting for the Lions and hope I'm wrong. I'm taking the Paladins.
All right, and Grayson is also taking the Paladins to win this game. I just want to take an opportunity as we jump in to my pick here to take the opportunity to thank Coach Humphreys. Also, he brought 3 players out to the studio yesterday for later this morning in Rome. Had a really fun conversation with Coach Humphreys as always, and then getting to know some of those kids on the team. Evan Whiteside, Elliott Whiteside, and also Davis Blankenship. They joined us on the program. And again, it's always great to talk to Coach Humphreys, but I was so impressed with the way that those young men handled the situation of being on the radio and in the studio for the first time. None of them have ever done that before, and they handled it like they've done it many times, which was super impressive. And one of the things that jumped off the page to me about the way they talked about this game and talked about playing, football throughout the season was there was this confidence that came from that side of the room. And it was kind of a quiet confidence. Like they feel very confident and good about their chances to go win this football game. And I think that bodes well for this type of situation. They know what this team is capable of because they played them before. But at the same time, I came away with the impression that they felt like they had made some mistakes in that game that kind of put their backs up against the wall earlier. And to your point, they had that stretch where they didn't have a game for 4 weeks, which was a momentum killer and a rhythm killer to your preparation and things of that nature. And you can do what you try. You try to do all kind of things in practice and going, bowling and different stuff and trying to keep everybody together. But it's not the same as getting out there and locking horns with another team and playing in a game. So it took a little while to get that rust and that dust knocked off. And then, as you pointed out, a couple of weeks after they lost, they lost those first couple of games back, they started winning, and they won 5 games in a row. And now they're clicking on all cylinders, and they're in a situation where they want to get in there and have an opportunity to get some revenge and avenge another loss. And as you pointed out, they were able to do that in the first round of the playoffs. I'm going to go the opposite direction. I think Unity has put it together, and I know this Pinecrest team is really good, but don't sleep on this Unity team because I think they're fully capable of pulling off the upset in this game, so much so that I'm comfortable in making that pick.
Okay.
I think they're going back-to-back and are going to make it 2 in a row.
That'd be awesome.
I'm impressed with this bunch.
Yeah,
I
that'd
really
be
am.
awesome.
I believe they can get it done. So we have a difference. Grayson. There's some daylight out there for you, man.
Yeah.
All right.
5 games to go.
Let's move on to our next one. This one is going to pit out of 7A D2, the Tryon Bulldogs, number 7 team in the state, hitting the road. Another long trip. They're going to 4A D2, Telfair County, the Trojans, at 9-2 and 6-0. This is the first meeting of these two teams in history, according to the Georgia High School Football Daily. When you look at this Tryon team, Ian, they've suffered a couple of close playoff losses in a few seasons. The OT loss at home to Elbert County last season in the second round, the OT loss in 2021 at Wilcox in the second round. And in between those 2 seasons in 2023, they lost a 2-score affair to St. Francis. And last week, they gave the heartbreak to Schley County, in a situation where they're on the road in a tough environment, all those sorts of things. And it's hard not to get the sense that this team feels like they can overcome anything with the adversity that they faced. And with the maturity and the experience that they have starting at the quarterback position, they like to throw the ball. They can run it. There's a lot of different things that this Tryon football can do, and they're hard-nosed. They play good defense. The Trojans have only played 1 top 10 team this season, losing to Lamar County 24-8. Tryon's got to hit the road, second long road trip in consecutive weeks. But I think all the adversity that these kids have navigated together as a group built them up, and they're prepared for these type of situations, and they're not intimidated by it. So I think they're clicking on all cylinders. I think they've got the confidence, momentum, everything they need to get this job done, and I think they do. I'm going with Tryon in this game.
All right, yeah, Tryon. Look, let's talk about this game here. The Trojans, their opponent here, the home team, winners of 9 straight. But if you look at that schedule again, only 1 top 10 team, and they lost soundly in that one. Tryon, on the other hand, very battle-tested. They did drop a few games to good teams, but they've got some good wins on their resume anyway. And when you talk to Coach Patrick in the preseason, one of the major goals, of course, they wanted to win the region. They played in a pretty tough region. Manchester and Bowden finished ahead of them. Those are 2 really good football teams, so they didn't get that repeat as region champions, but one of the major goals was to try to make a deep run in the playoffs. When they got to the state playoffs, they wanted to get past that second round. You mentioned those 2 really tough defeats that they've suffered. This is a group of seniors that play for each other, and they are going to go on the road, and they're going to get the win, and they're going to make it to the next round of the playoffs. Bulldogs win.
So we see this similarly, and Grayson also is going to pick Tryon.
He learned his lesson after taking Schley last week.
Yep, and I think he
was
felt confident in that one too.
He was.
But anyway, so moving on, we'll pick another one here, and then we'll take our next break, and we'll come back for our final 3 picks. But out of 2A, it's Westside Macon 'Cause there's West Side Augusta, and there's a couple other West Sides out there in the state of Georgia. But this is the Seminoles out of Macon. They're 6-5. They ended up 3-2 in region play, and they are playing at 7AA's number 8 team in the classification in the state, Rockmart Yellow Jackets, 9-2, 8-0. Ian, you referenced this earlier. They've won 9 games in a row after a tough start, playing some tough teams. So, yeah, and they get this one at home. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's always helpful when you've got an environment like they do over there at the Rock to have a game like this there. Seminoles will make that road trip. They've got a winning record, but overall, they've been outscored by a pretty wide margin from their opponents overall. They didn't play a very challenging schedule. No really quality wins or quality losses, if you ask me. So I don't think they'll be overwhelmed by the talent Rockmart has seen. They've played a couple of teams that might be on that level. But it's not going to matter. This was the only easy game for me to pick this week. Rockmart wins big, I think.
I'm going to agree with you on this one, man. When you look at the situation for Rockmart, reeling off 9 straight wins, including their recent 30-6 victory over Redan in the first round. You got big plays from Nate Davis in the game, who was in on a safety. Also had a big run that set up a touchdown late in the fourth quarter, I understand. This is according to the Polk County Standard-Journal. Luke Parker, he was one of the quarterbacks at Darlington last year, so we saw what he's capable of firsthand. He threw a couple of big TD passes in their win last week. Yellow Jackets can run a pretty dynamic offense with the running and passing capabilities of this team, which can be tough to defend, and I think it will be here for this West Side team. So I'm going to go with Rockmart to win the game as well, and Grayson has taken Rockmart also.
We're running out of bullets, Grayson.
Running out here. We'll see what happens. Still some interesting matchups left to go in our picks today. But we're going to take a break before we get into that. We got 3 more games to pick here for our show and for the show in general.
That's right.
Because this is the last episode, no matter what the results turn out to be. So we will go ahead and take a break. We'll come back with more after these messages.
Shop for your next car, truck, or SUV at Riverside Auto Group. Check out riversideautogroup.com today to browse their selection or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, and the all-new Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group. Visit riversideautogroup.com.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our final edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. It's always bittersweet to have the season come to an end, but we're excited that we have 6 area teams to talk about today and their chances for playoff glory. So we're going to jump back in 7 AAA, where the Douglas Astros will visit the Calhoun Yellow Jackets at the Reeve. Should be an electric atmosphere.
This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 8-3 teams here. The Astros are battle tested, and they're going to come in to this game with plenty of confidence. But the Yellow Jackets are also battle tested, and I have a real hard time picking against them at home. Now, you break down this matchup, I think they're going to have to win a low-scoring game, because if you look at the defense, Douglas has only given up 116 points all season. They only gave up more than 20 points twice. They gave up 20 once and 21 in another game, but they've played a tough schedule. So this is going to be a first 1-20 type game. I just can't bet against Calhoun at home. I'm going to take the Jackets. Close, 4-quarter fight here.
I get what you're saying about that, because if you've ever been to the Reeve, particularly this time of year, it's going to be packed, it's going to be loud, it's going to have kind of a collegiate experience type of atmosphere. It's going to be so much fun to be in one of those games, and I've been there multiple occasions. I know you have as well to watch playoff games. So you're exactly right. It's fun. Series history wise, there is a little bit here, and believe it or not, it's not in the playoffs. Both games in the series have been played in the regular season. Calhoun leads 2-0 over the Astros. The Jackets hosted the Astros in 2016 and 17 in the regular season openers. And the 2016 game ended in a 28-0 victory for Calhoun, but the 2017 game was a 3-point game. I kind of feel like this is going to be more like 2017, as you alluded to just a few moments ago. Douglas is very consistent and capable squad. They score about 30 points a game, give up about 10. A couple of players of note that I picked up on from the Georgia High School Football Daily: the 3A Offensive Player of the Year, their quarterback, John Wilson, and then also Defensive Player of the Year, defensive back Jonte Gilbert, who is going to be going to Georgia. So they got some dudes, just naming a couple, on both sides of the ball. So they're going to put up a fight in this game. So it's Douglas, and they're good players against Calhoun's really good players, but Douglas facing that tough environment as well. And I kind of think that that's going to be the difference in the game. But I think it's going to be close, and I could see it going either way. But I'm like you. I'm not picking against the Yellow Jackets in the second round of the playoffs, playing the game at home. I'm just not going to do that.
How about our boy Grayson?
He picked Calhoun.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So he has also taken Calhoun. So we got 2 more games.
I know.
He needs a difference here.
He needs one desperately. You're the champ.
That's right.
That's just how it's going to be. So. You want to take this next one?
Sure thing, man. And one of the things that I have on my list that I forgot to point out down here is let you know who these teams are going to play. Obviously, if Unity, whether they win or lose, that's the end of the season. So they're either going to be the champions or the runners-up. Tryon or Telfair are going to play the winner of Irwin County and Early County. And then the winner of the West Side and a Rockmart game will play the winner of Sumter County at Morgan County. And then the winner of the game we just talked about, Douglas Astros at Calhoun Yellow Jackets, plays the winner of Baldwin County and Peach County. Of course, Peach County and Calhoun have some
serious history. Yeah.
I won't get into that today, but anybody that remembers that championship games remembers a little bit about that. So with that said, let's talk about Stars Mill Panthers at 10-1, 5-1. They ended up in region play. Going to Weinman Stadium there at 7-4A, number 2 in the state, Cartersville Canes, 11-0, 6-0. They went in region play. And I'm not sure what the Panthers have back from last year's team that lost by 4 points in the semifinals, but they are obviously a very good team and potentially tough second-round matchup for whoever they get. But Cartersville, was also a semifinal team last year as well as the year before, and they've got a lot of playmakers, experience, beat a tough first-round opponent, and then they get this one at home. They've won games different ways this year. One of the ones that jumps off the page for me, and we've talked about this a lot over the last few weeks, is the way that they were able to overcome Cedartown, dictating how that game went with their running game and their ball control offense that they have, and they still found a way to win that game. And this is a team that will just get out there and do what they need to do to win games, and they're going to be prepared, no doubt about it. Coach Foster's done a great job with this group, and who knows what can happen, but this is one of those teams that I'm not going to be surprised at all if they're hoisting a championship trophy at the end of the year. They're that good. So I'm going to take Cartersville in this game, but it could be interesting. What do you say?
Yeah, I think it will be interesting. Stars Mill with only 1 loss on the season, as you mentioned, and they have some quality wins on their resume as well. But the Canes are in the exact same boat. They're undefeated with a bunch of quality wins, and that win against Cedartown stands out in my mind as well, because that's what's impressive about this Cartersville team. They're explosive on offense. They've got a ton of playmakers. They are a quick strike offense. You blink, they're down the field knocking on the door. But they gutted out a game in which they didn't have a lot of success getting into the end zone and putting points on the board. A 19-14 victory against Cedartown because they can rely on their defense as well. They're very tough on that side of the ball. The Canes get this one at home. This is a 4-quarter fight too, much like that Calhoun game. I think they're going to have to gut one out here, but I think the Canes win.
All right, so we agree on that one. And with that, I'll also let you know that Grayson has taken the Cartersville Canes as well.
He loves them.
He
stood by them all season.
What's not to love? I mean, they're an excellent football team. All right, we've got one more game to pick. Am I right about that?
You are.
Yeah.
One final game.
So and this will wrap up our year of picking games here on This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, and it's a biggie. It is out of 2-5A, the number 3 team in the state, Thomas County Central Yellow Jackets at 10-1, 4-1 in region play, going to 5-5A Barron Stadium to face the Rome Wolves, number 9. Rome is 8-2 ran the table in region, 7-0, region champs. Yellow Jackets lead the series 1-0 after eliminating Rome, as you pointed out, 19-16 in the quarters. Last season went on to win the 6A state championship, and Rome's out for revenge. Ian, you went to Rome High.
I did.
You're an alum.
True.
You followed
True.
this team closer than anybody in the room. It's just me and you here.
It is.
You think Rome gets their revenge this year?
Yeah, let's break it down here. The Yellow Jackets have one loss on their resume. Came to Lee County. Lee County is a fantastic team, and it was a competitive game. In those other 10 games, the Yellow Jackets didn't just win. They annihilated everyone that stood in their way. And there were some good teams that tried to oppose them, and they couldn't stand a chance. They have an explosive offense, but just as stingy a defense to match it. The Wolves also have one of the best defenses in the state. You know, they had a tough start to the season, but Carrollton is next world. They really are. So we've seen them be dominant ever since those opening losses. And, you know, we talked about Unity having a strange stretch of their season. Rome had a really weird start to the season, but then ran the table in region play, was dominant in their first round win of the playoffs. They get this one at home. And John Reed has a history of doing really well in these revenge games. Central, I think, is the favorite. If you talk to people across the state, I think that most people would take Central. But I'm taking the Wolves. It is going to be a rocking environment at Barron Stadium tomorrow night, and I am betting on the Wolves to get that precious payback. And that would set up, I know Hughes is in the mix for their next round, right?
The winner plays either Roswell or Hughes.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, they won't be looking ahead to who they play next week. I promise you that. Rome is squarely focused on payback. I think they get it.
We're going to see. As you mentioned, Thomas County Central, champions last year. They had a 56-0 lead in the first half, 176 over a Winder Barrow team. It was the fifth game of the season that they scored 60 or more points. They're averaging over 50 points a game. You mentioned how good they are defensively. This Rome team, your goal is when you get to the end of the season to be peaking at the right time. And it really feels like that it's set up where Rome can peak at the right time. They're going to have to play the game of their lives to get this one. But I think Thomas County Central, Yellow Jackets, are going to have to play the game of their lives as well. I think it's going to be an unbelievable game. But at the end of the day, the numbers and the history of this Thomas County Central Yellow Jackets team and what they've accomplished this last couple of years, even though they're playing this one in a tough environment, are too difficult for me to ignore. So I'm going to take Thomas County Central to win the game, but I will not be surprised whatsoever if the Rome Wolves figure out a way to make a few more plays than the Yellow Jackets do and end up pulling off what, as you pointed out, most would probably consider a little bit, at least a mild upset in this game. It won't shock me at all, and I certainly hope that's what happens. And again, the winner plays Roswell or Hughes coming up next weekend in the quarterfinal round.
Let's go Wolves.
And I hate to tell you this, Grayson, but he already knows if he's watching the show. He also took Thomas County Central as well. So
that's it. Matt Davis.
One difference. I'm up by 2. So no matter what happens this weekend, I have won the picks challenge this year.
2024 champion.
Victory lap.
Matt Davis.
But boy, he pushed it.
He pushed it.
To the
He
edge.
did. He did.
So anyway, yeah.
Congratulations, buddy.
That's that. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in for this episode and throughout the season of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. It has been a pleasure, Ian, getting to sit in here with you and also Grayson. And then not to mention, we certainly want to thank all the coaches that participated in the show this year, because we added the Game of the Week feature that we had most weeks until we got to the playoffs. We had some really fun conversations this year, didn't we?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to them. And, I talked about it in our first segment, but the opportunity to speak with these coaches, I've gotten to know a lot of them over the years with the V3 previews, but we have just an outstanding group of coaches, and we had the pleasure of stepping outside of our coverage area a little bit this season, getting to talk with Bowden's head coach and Hiram. Those guys were fantastic as well. So I really appreciate their desire to promote their programs and their appreciation of the platform that we have here. They were all very gracious, and nobody can give you the information better than the guys who are out there teaching these kids how to play and prepare them for these games. So we'll continue that feature next year, and wish everybody that's still going, all these teams we highlighted today, we hope you come away with the victory.
Most definitely, and to your point on the interviews. Obviously, sports, a lot of what's fun about following is the storylines and the personalities.
Yeah.
And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about Coach Finley that we talked to from Bowden, and a lot of these different folks that we talked to, and how they all stand out as having very different personalities and talk about some of the same stuff, but kind of, touch on things from different angles and that sort of thing, which is really kind of neat to get that experience. And hopefully that came across in the conversations for people that watched the show this year.
Yeah, it certainly was a learning experience for us as we do what we do. So, really, really fun feature to the show this year.
Anything else?
Man, I've enjoyed it. I always do. Another great season, and we'll look forward to getting back at it in 2025.
It'll be here before you know it. Well, thank you again, everybody, for tuning in to this episode and, again, the rest of the season for This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. Good luck to all our area Northwest Georgia football teams. And, we'll talk to you next time on This Week in Northwest Georgia Football. Have a great weekend, everybody. And as you can see from the decor we have in the studio, we certainly want to wish you and your family a very happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Grayson. Appreciate you guys. And we're out of here.
This has been another edition of This Week in Northwest Georgia Football, brought to you by Riverside Auto Group and produced by WLAQ Sports. We appreciate you tuning in and invite you to tune in again next week. Please like, share, and subscribe.